Hey nerds, for my first deck tech of Magic Foundations, I decided to build Qala, Ajani's Pridemate. I've loved Soul Sister decks for years, and when I saw I can build a mono-white version, I was hooked. Now, for those who don't know, Soul Sisters refers to an archetype built around Soul Ward and Soul's Attendant, and then small creatures to gain life. Then you use Ajani's Pridemate and Serra Ascendant to beat face, or Chalice of Life if the game goes long. The basic idea for this deck was to load up on cheap creatures that either gain life, grow from gaining life, or both, and then win with combat damage or blasting the table with an Aetherflux Reservoir. So let's jump in and see what Qala can do. Also, I have a Discord server now. If you want to join the community, check that out in the video description below. Kicking things off, let's talk about the Soul Sisters of the deck. Now, a Soul Sister is basically any creature that gains its life whenever a creature enters. The original duo of Soul Ward and Soul's Attendant trigger on every creature, while some of the newer versions like Guide of Souls, Hinterland Sanctifier, and Lunarch Veteran only trigger on our creatures. Guide of Souls has the added benefit of giving creatures, like our commander, +1/+1 and flying counters. There are also some 2-mana creatures that do this, such as Daxos Blessed by the Sun and Sutra Priest. And then finally, we have 2 non-creature Soul Sister effects with Ajani's Welcome and Case of the Uneaten Feast. There are more of these effects, but I ended up cutting some of them from my personal list. The new Dazzling Angel could be worth including, but this effect felt way too weak at 3 mana. I had a friend suggest Ariok Champion, but it didn't make the cut given our budget. Angel's Feather, Staff of the Sun Magus, and Paradise Plume are artifacts that gain us life when we cast white spells, but we're a creature-based deck, so I prioritized creatures with this effect instead of artifacts. Now, finally, Authority of the Consuls and Abiding Grace. Authority was almost $8 when I first built the deck, but it has come down in price, so it might be worth swapping out Ajani's Welcome for it. As I mentioned earlier, Soul Sister decks tend to win with beatdown. Now, sadly, Ajani's Pridemate has been power crept over the last several years, but that isn't stopping me from playing it. I also wanted to add Ajani's Strength of Pride to make more Ajani's Pridemate tokens, and if you're looking for better versions of Pridemate, try Voice of the Blessed, Essence Channeler, and Exemplar of Light. They either have or can get flying pretty easily, and they come down early. Exemplar is the most expensive of these cards at 4 mana, but it also provides us card draw when it grows. We can also buff our entire board with Righteous Valkyrie, as long as we have enough life. And because all of these cards add counters, we can add some counter synergies to the deck. Lae'zel Valkith's Champion, and Reluctant Role Model. Role Model is great here because Qala doesn't care about just +1/+1 counters, but any type of counter. So keyword counters will still help buff our board. That's also why Guide of Souls is so powerful here. You might want to consider adding Resourceful Defense or the Uzalith, assuming you have the budget for it, to help move counters around. Thankfully, Role Model does the same exact thing, and it's on a creature, which synergizes better with our deck. I also wanted to add some token generation to the deck, so we have some disposable creatures we can swing in with. I went with Cat Collector, Regal Caracal, Defiler of Faith, and Oketra's Monument. Monument and Defiler also act as ramp here, which is great 2-for-1 value. And you have the added benefit of any creatures that cost 1 generic and 1 white are essentially free if you have both of these in play. Now, I would have loved to have added something like Ocelot Pride, but it's way too expensive for this list. And I think Elspeth Sun's Champion is too expensive mana-wise. Now, I did add Sun Titan to my list, which is also 6 mana, but it's a creature which we can attack with, and it's recursion. So I think it's a little bit more valuable than Elspeth here. I also added some backup win conditions because sometimes beating face just isn't enough. I wanted to add Heliod Suncrown and Walking Ballista, but I couldn't quite make it fit within the budget. Approach the Second Sun might be tempting, but I think it's too slow in this deck. It works much better in something like Trellisar Moondancer, where you can scry the top of your deck away. But of course, Aetherflux Reservoir should do the trick here, especially when you combine it with one of my favorite cards, Martyr of Sands. The amount of life you can gain with this card is absolutely wild. Yes, you will only get 1 counter on your commander, even if you gain like 15 life, but this can provide us with a massive burst of life we need to ping someone down, and it's a great reanimation target with Sun Titan. And of course, there's another way we can gain a bunch of life at once. Zurin Orb and Cosmic Intervention. Cosmic Intervention will return all of the lands we sacrifice with Zurin Orb back into play. If you want it to be mean, you could combo Cosmic Intervention with Mass Land Destruction like Armageddon or Ravages of War. I'm not doing that because I think that's a little too mean, but something to keep in mind. Zurin Orb's also great with all the catch-up ramp we have. We can sacrifice a plains, gain 2 life, and then play Knight of the White Orchid to get another land, so we're not really that far behind. Now, I want to go over some of the cards that didn't quite make the cut for either budget or synergy reasons. I had quite a bit of equipment in the deck originally. Cards like Sword of Forge and Frontier, Sword of Hearth and Home, and Blade of Selves. Now, both the Swords of X and Y would be great in the deck as a way to ramp and gain life by blinking creatures. And Blade of Selves is just a fun card that can copy things like Seasoned Dungeoneer, Palace Jailer, and Regal Caracal. Seasoned Dungeoneer here is actually really good because our commander's a warrior, which means we can give it protection from creatures when we attack. Now, some other solid upgrades you could include would be Solitude, Celestine the Living Saint, Zera Ascendant, and Archangel of Thune. Finally, let's talk about some other ways you could build Qala. Now, life gain is the most obvious, and that's why I chose it. I also think it's probably the best way. But you could also build mono white cats. Now, there are 14 cats in mono white that either have or can get lifelink in some way. Then you would add the new Erebos the First Fanged, and Healer of the Pride for even more life gain and cat synergies. Now, I don't think this is as powerful as going for pure life gain, but it's something to keep in mind if you want to build a deck a little differently, or maybe even lean into that cat theme a little bit more. Now, as always, you can find a link to the deck in the video description below, and let me know in the comments what commander you're looking forward to building, or have built for Foundations. If you want more deck techs like this, make sure to give the video a like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss when all my videos go live. Alrighty nerds, I'll see you in the next one.